So let's do a little review of Excel and specifically pivot tables within Excel. So I've downloaded my Data Excel Primer from Canvas, and let's go and let's open that up. Alright, and so here I have my data. Now, through the course of doing all of our stuff with the Excel certification exam, I'm not so much worried about being able to format things and whatnot. I do care more about actually some of the more useful stuff that we are going to do with Excel. And so one of the things we are going to do a lot is pivot tables. And pivot tables are fantastic for slicing and dicing data and really being able to dig down into what's going on. So what we're going to do is we are going to build a pivot table from this data. We are on the sheet of customer data. And so a couple things that we need for a pivot table. One, we need what is called a vertical table. This is a vertical table. We have column headers at the top and then data running down from there. This is a relatively small data set of around 200 data points, so it's pretty easy to deal with. The other thing is we have to have a title here for every single thing, because if not, the computer has an extensional crisis and cannot create the pivot table, so we need all those. And one thing that I will point out, some of you may be looking at this and going, hey, I've got an error because I have all these hashtags here. That is not really an error with Excel. In Excel, there are 9 errors that start hashtag whatever, and they tell you what the error are. We'll go over those a little bit later in class. All this means here with all the hashtags is, hey, I've got too much data to show you, so I'm going to put this up to let you know that I can't show it all. How do you fix that? Well, we need to make the column wider. And so a quick way to do that is if you look at my cursor between H and I, and I've highlighted and I've got the little arrow with the line with the 2 arrows, if I double click, it auto fits my column there. And in fact, some of these aren't wide enough, so what I'm going to do is I'll highlight all of them and double click on one of them and everything auto fits. So I'm going to want to create a pivot table from this. And as I said, a pivot table is great because it allows us to slice and dice data. We are missing a column, though. I do want to add a column here in J, and we're going to call it margin. And so what margin is margin is the money that I have left over after I take my sales and subtract my cost. It's pretty much the same thing as profit. And we're going to write an equation to solve that. Now, as we write equations in Excel, I've seen students in the past, they will write equal sum and then write their equation. We don't have to worry about that. It is just equals, and that's it. And so we're going to do H2 minus I2. Great thing about Excel, it is a visual programming language, so we can kind of see what's going on. And even after I write this equation, if I come back and click in the bar, you can see in the equation bar, it is written in colors. H2 is blue, I2 is red, and then we can see the cells pop up with that. Makes it really handy for troubleshooting problems. And just a quick aside, as we're looking at these margin numbers, this calculation for margin, we've got a subtraction in there. One thing that we need to keep in mind, this is for all coding programs and Excel, they all operate under what is called PEDMOS or BEDMOS. This is the order of operations. Does brackets or parentheses first, does exponentials, and then the DM and AS, it does all at the same time. So it'll start reading left to right, and when it does DM, it divide and multiply, so if it hits a divide or a multiply, it immediately does that. AS is add, subtract, same thing. It starts left to right. If it hits an add or a subtract, it immediately does that. Because of this, I constantly am putting parentheses all over the place. You will see as we do equations going forward, I do that a lot just to make sure there's not a problem. All right, beautiful thing about Excel, as you probably know, is the idea of indexing. If I go and I grab this little corner box, I'll call it a grip on the right-hand side, and pull it down 1, Excel looks at that and goes, hey, you increased your row number by 1, so I'm going to go and change every single cell reference that you have in the equation and increase it by 1. So in our case, these are all what are called relative references, so they'll completely change. They do that with rows or columns. As we go on, we'll talk about different ways of grounding and different ways of writing the equations to lock that in. But right now, we'll just go with this. Now I can sit there, I can click on this, and I can drag it down through all the data points. Not a problem. We've only got 200, but there is a quicker way of doing it, and as we start getting into data sets, if we're looking at 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 data points, we don't want to do that. And so an easy way to do it, I have my equation here, I have my data here. If I highlight the little corner there, and I get the black X, and if I double click on it, that will automatically drag down and fill in the entire data set. Now, if I had a column in here and a space, it wouldn't work because it needs data over there. So especially if you have a big data set, if you want that space in there, just do it like we just did it, then insert a space. All right, so right now our table's put together so that I will be able to go and I will be able to build my pivot table off of that. And that's actually going to be the next video, is we're going to build a pivot table with this information.